What if I told you that the seeds sitting in your garden right now, the ones you're planning to throw away at the end of this season, could still be growing strong, viable food for your family in the year 2074? Not in a lab, not in some government seed vault buried under a mountain in Norway. On your property, in your home, using a method that Amish families have quietly passed down for over a century. A method so simple it requires nothing more than what you probably already have in your kitchen. Most of us have been taught, without anyone ever saying it out loud, that seeds are a one-season thing. You buy them in the spring, you plant them, and then you either let the plants die or you buy new seeds next year. The seed companies certainly don't correct that assumption. Why would they? It's worth billions. But here's what I found out 3 years ago after spending time with an Amish seed keeper in Lancaster County who had seeds in her root cellar that had been in her family since before her grandmother was born. Seeds that still germinated, seeds that still grew. And when I asked her how they kept them that long, she didn't reach for a vacuum sealer or a fancy oxygen absorber kit from the internet. She walked over to a wooden shelf and showed me a row of old glass jars packed with dried herbs and a simple white powder I recognized immediately. I went home and tested everything she told me. I pulled seeds from my own garden, tomatoes, peppers, squash, lettuce, beans, and stored them the Amish way. Then I tested germination rates at 6 months, at 1 year, and at 2 years. Every single variety outperformed anything I had stored in standard paper envelopes, even the ones marketed as airtight. And today, I'm going to show you exactly what she showed me. Stay with me through to the end of this video because I'm also going to give you a stripped-down version of this method, a 10-minute version using only 2 ingredients that anyone can do tonight, even if you've never saved a seed in your life. What's coming is going to completely change the way you think about your garden. Let's get into it. Now, before I show you the method, I want to give you the full picture of where this comes from, because understanding the source is what makes you actually trusted enough to use it. The Amish are not gardening hobbyists. They are, by necessity, among the most serious and methodical food producers in North America. In a traditional Amish household, you are not supplementing your grocery shopping with a backyard garden. You are feeding a family of 8, 10, sometimes 12 people from your own land year after year, decade after decade. There are no backup options. There is no grocery delivery. There is no seed subscription box showing up on your porch in March. That level of dependency creates a different relationship with seeds than most of us will ever have. Seeds aren't a consumable product to them. Seeds are wealth. Seeds are security. Seeds are heritage. And because of that, the Amish have had every reason in the world to figure out exactly how to preserve them, not for 1 extra season, but for a generation. The woman I met, I'll call her Ruth because she was genuinely private about what she shared, was a 3rd-generation seed keeper. Her grandmother had started the collection before World War II. Some of the varieties in those jars don't exist commercially anymore. They are living history, kept alive by a system of storage that Ruth described with the calm certainty of someone who has never once worried about whether it would work because it never once had failed her family. What struck me most wasn't just the longevity of the seeds, it was the simplicity. I had spent years reading about long-term seed storage, humidity controls, nitrogen flushing, mylar pouches, silica gel packets, and exact ratios. Ruth had none of that, and her seeds, by every measurable standard, were performing better than anything I had stored with expensive equipment. The method she uses is rooted in principles that are older than modern chemistry. Principles around moisture, oxygen, and temperature that the Amish figured out empirically through generations of what worked and what didn't. They didn't have the science to explain it in those terms. They just knew that if you did it this way, the seeds lasted, and if you didn't, they didn't. Since that conversation, I've dug into the science behind every element of what she described, and here's what's remarkable. Modern seed biology not only confirms everything she does, it explains exactly why it works at a molecular level. This isn't folk wisdom that happens to perform. It's folk wisdom that happens to be exactly right. Let me show you the science first so that when you do the steps, you understand why each one matters. Here's what you need to understand about seeds, because most people have never been taught this, and it changes everything. A seed isn't dormant in the way we usually think of the word. It's not switched off. It's running, just incredibly slowly. Even a dry seed sitting on a shelf has a metabolic rate. It's consuming its own stored energy reserves at a tiny, nearly imperceptible pace. The question of how long a seed stays viable is really a question of how slowly you can make that metabolism run. 3 factors control seed metabolism and therefore seed lifespan: moisture, oxygen, and temperature. Those 3 things are what Ruth's method addresses, and they're what most home seed storage gets wrong. Moisture is the single critical factor. Seed scientists use something called the rule of 5s. For every 1% reduction in seed moisture content, seed lifespan roughly doubles. And for every 5-degree Fahrenheit drop in storage temperature, lifespan roughly doubles again. That compounding effect is why getting seeds to truly dry storage conditions before sealing them is not just helpful, it's the entire ballgame. The problem with standard paper envelopes, even stored in a cool place, is that paper breathes. It allows moisture from the surrounding environment to migrate in and out with seasonal humidity changes. Every time that happens, seeds go through a microcycle of slightly increased metabolic activity and then slow back down. Over years, those microcycles accumulate and shorten viability dramatically. Oxygen is the second factor. Oxygen accelerates oxidative degradation of the cell membranes inside the seed embryo. Over time, that damage becomes irreversible, and the embryo can no longer successfully complete germination even if everything else is perfect. This is why sealed storage is critical, but sealing in residual moisture is actually worse than not sealing at all, which is why the drying step that Ruth's method emphasizes comes first, not second. Temperature is the third variable. Warmth accelerates every biological process, including the ones that degrade seeds. The ideal long-term seed storage is below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is why a root cellar, like Ruth uses, is the original and still one of the best solutions. But the method works at standard refrigerator temperatures too, which I'll show you. Here's the piece that most people miss entirely. Before you even think about containers or temperature, you need to address the seed's moisture content at the cellular level, not just surface dryness, internal moisture. A seed can feel completely dry to the touch and still contain enough internal moisture to significantly shorten its lifespan. The Amish method uses a 2-stage drying process combined with a specific natural desiccant to pull moisture to a level that modern seed labs consider optimal for long-term storage, typically between 5 and 8% moisture content. Achieving that without laboratory equipment is exactly what Ruth figured out, and exactly what I'm about to show you. Now, let me walk you through every step. Alright, before I get into the step-by-step method, I want to take 30 seconds here because if you've made it this far, this video is clearly for you. What we're about to go through is the full Amish seed-saving method broken down into every individual step with exact materials, timing, and the common mistakes I made the first time so you don't have to. This is the part of the video that most people are going to want to come back to, and I want to make that easy for you. I put together a free reference guide that covers everything in this video in a single printable page: the full drying process, the storage ratios, the container checklist, and the germination testing protocol you can use to verify your seeds are still viable years from now. You can grab that guide using the link in the description below, or if you're watching on a phone, there's a QR code on screen right now that takes you directly to the download page. No email required, just a free resource that I genuinely wish I had when I started. If you find that useful, the best thing you can do is share this video with one person who gardens. That's honestly all I ask. Now, stay with me through to the end of this method, because in the bonus section, I'm going to show you the 2-ingredient version of this that you can do in 10 minutes with things you already have at home. It's the version I recommend for absolute beginners, and it still dramatically outperforms standard seed storage. Let's keep going. Step 1. Select the right seeds to save. The method only works as well as the seeds you start with, and not all seeds are worth saving for long-term storage. This is the step most beginner seed savers skip entirely, and it's why they end up disappointed 2 or 3 years later when germination rates collapse. The first rule is this: only save seeds from open pollinated or heirloom varieties, not hybrids. Hybrid seeds, which are labeled F1 on most seed packets, are the result of crossing two distinct parent lines to produce a plant with specific traits. That first generation performs beautifully, but the seeds from that plant carry a scrambled genetic blueprint. If you save and plant them, you'll get something unpredictable, often reverting toward one parent line, often producing inferior fruit or yield. The Amish have always known this intuitively, which is why traditional Amish seed collections are built entirely on open-pollinated varieties passed down intact through generations. Open-pollinated seeds, by contrast, breed true. The tomato you grew from saved seed will produce the same tomato your grandmother grew from her saved seed, given the same conditions. That genetic consistency is what makes long-term storage meaningful. You're preserving something worth preserving. How to identify the right plants to save from? Choose your best-performing specimens. The plant that produced the most fruit, stayed healthiest through disease pressure, or showed the most vigor in your specific climate. Seed saving is selection, and over generations, that selection adapts your seed stock to your exact growing conditions. Ruth's seeds weren't just old, they were optimized for Lancaster County through 100 years of careful selection. Timing matters for seed harvest. For wet-seeded crops like tomatoes, peppers, squash, and cucumbers, the fruit needs to be fully mature, past the point you'd normally eat it. For tomatoes, that means letting them go soft and almost overripe on the vine. For peppers, waiting until they've fully colored and begun to wrinkle slightly. For dry-seeded crops like beans, peas, lettuce, and most flowers, you wait until the seed pod or head has dried on the plant naturally, then harvest before rain or humidity causes mold. Never save seeds from diseased plants, deformed fruit, or plants that showed poor performance. You're locking in whatever the plant expressed. Step 2. Extract and clean the seeds. Wet-seeded crops require a fermentation step to remove the germination-inhibiting gel coat around the seed. This is one of the steps Ruth described that I initially dismissed as old-fashioned, until I read the research on it and realized it's genuinely important. For tomatoes, scoop the seed gel into a small glass jar. Add just enough water to cover, roughly equal parts seed gel and water. Do not seal the jar. Cover it loosely with a piece of cheesecloth or a paper towel held on with a rubber band. Leave it at room temperature, between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit, for 2 to 3 days. You'll see a layer of white or gray mold form on the surface. That's correct and expected. The fermentation process breaks down the gel coat and also kills many seed-borne pathogens that would otherwise travel with the seed into storage. After 2 to 3 days, no longer, or the seeds begin to germinate, pour off the mold and floating debris with water. The viable seeds will have sunk to the bottom. Rinse them thoroughly through a fine mesh strainer under cool running water until the water runs completely clear. For peppers and squash, the seeds can be scraped directly from the fruit and rinsed without fermentation. Use a strainer and your fingers to remove the placental material attached to the seeds. Rinse well. For dry-seeded crops, thresh the dried pods by crushing them lightly in your hands over a clean surface or inside a paper bag. Separate the seeds from the chaff by pouring slowly from one container to another in front of a gentle fan. The chaff blows away, the seeds fall straight down. This is called winnowing, and the Amish use it for every dry-seeded crop they save. Step 2. The two-stage drying process. This is the core of the Amish method, and it's where most modern seed savers fall short. Standard advice is to dry seeds on a paper towel for a week. That produces surface dry seeds. The Amish method produces deeply dried seeds, and the difference in storage longevity is measurable and significant. Stage 1. Air drying. Spread your clean seeds on a ceramic plate, a glass dish, or a piece of window screen. Do not use paper towels. Paper absorbs surface moisture well, but seeds stick to it when they dry, and you end up damaging the seed coat trying to remove them. Non-stick surfaces only. Place the tray in a spot with good air circulation, not in sunlight, which can overheat and damage seeds, and not in a humid area, like near the sink or in a basement. An interior table near a window with a gentle fan moving air nearby is ideal. Leave the seeds to air dry for a minimum of 1 week. 2 weeks is better for larger seeds like squash, beans, and peppers. You're looking for seeds that snap cleanly when you try to bend them, rather than bending or denting. Stage 2. Desiccant drying. This is the step that takes seeds from dry enough to plant next year to dry enough to store for 50 years. Ruth uses white rice, and she's been using it her entire life because that's what her grandmother used. The science confirms it's an excellent natural desiccant in this application. Here's how to do the rice desiccant step. Spread uncooked white rice on a baking sheet in a single layer and bake at 250 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes. This drives out any moisture the rice has absorbed from ambient air, maximizing its desiccant capacity. Allow it to completely cool. Then, for every cup of seeds you're storing, place approximately half a cup of the dried rice into a small cloth sachet. A square of old cotton fabric tied closed with a rubber band works perfectly. Do not let the rice touch the seeds directly, as it can abrade delicate seed coats. Place your air-dried seeds in a small glass jar. I'll get to container selection in a moment. Drop the rice sachet in on top and seal the jar. Leave it in a cool, dark location for 2 to 4 weeks. The rice will continue drawing residual moisture out of the seeds until the system reaches equilibrium. At the end of this period, your seeds will be at or near the moisture content that seed labs target for cryogenic storage, achieved with white rice and an old jar. Do not skip stage 1 and go straight to desiccant drying. If there is significant surface moisture on the seeds when you seal them with the desiccant, you create conditions for mold inside the sealed environment. The 2 stages work in sequence. Surface moisture first, internal moisture second. Step 4. Container selection and preparation. Ruth uses mason jars. She has used mason jars her entire life. I'm going to tell you why that's actually the right answer, not just the sentimental one. Glass is the only container material that provides a true moisture vapor barrier at ambient temperatures. Plastic, including high-quality food-grade plastic, has a measurable moisture transmission rate, meaning that over years, microscopic amounts of moisture move through the walls. For short-term storage, this doesn't matter. For decade-scale storage, it matters a great deal. Glass transmits essentially zero moisture vapor. A sealed glass jar creates a genuinely stable internal environment in a way that no plastic container does. Use standard canning jars, ball, cur, or equivalent, with new lids and rings each time. Old lids may have degraded seals. The 2-piece canning lid system, when new, provides an excellent seal without any additional equipment. Jar preparation. Wash the jars in hot soapy water, rinse thoroughly, and allow them to dry completely in a warm oven at 200 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. This ensures no residual moisture is present in the jar when you seal your seeds. Dimensions matter. Use the smallest jar that comfortably holds your seeds plus the rice sachet. Dead airspace inside the jar contains oxygen and residual humidity, both of which you want to minimize. A half-pint jar for small seed quantities, a full pint for larger ones. Label everything before you seal the jar, not after. Write the variety name, the year the seeds were harvested, and the parent plant source if you're tracking selection over generations. Ruth's labels are written in pencil on strips of brown paper tucked inside the jar. Pencil is permanent where ink fades, and the inside label can't fall off. Step 5. Storage location and temperature management. The container and drying steps get your seeds into optimal condition. The storage location keeps them there. Temperature is the final controlling variable, and it compounds with everything you've already done. Seeds stored at 40 degrees Fahrenheit last roughly twice as long as seeds stored at 50 degrees, and roughly 4 times as long as seeds stored at 70 degrees. This is not a minor improvement. It's the difference between 10 years and 40 years of viability. Ruth's root cellar stays between 35 and 45 degrees year-round with naturally stable humidity, which is exactly why root cellars have been used for this purpose for centuries. If you have a root cellar, unheated basement section, or attached garage that stays cold but doesn't freeze in winter, that is your first choice storage location. If you don't have access to that kind of space, a standard refrigerator is an excellent alternative. The vegetable crisper jar, with the humidity setting turned to its lowest point, maintains the right temperature, and the glass jar provides the moisture barrier that the refrigerator's variable humidity environment would otherwise compromise. This is where I store my seeds, and my 2-year germination tests have consistently come back strong. One critical rule: do not move sealed seed jars repeatedly between warm and cold environments. Condensation forms on the inside of the jar when cold glass meets warm air, and that condensation goes directly onto your seeds. If you need to open a jar, bring it to room temperature slowly by leaving it on the counter, sealed, for 2 hours before opening. Then remove only what you need, reseal immediately, and return the jar to storage. Avoid any location with fluctuating temperatures, near exterior walls, above appliances, near heating vents, or in rooms that change significantly in temperature between seasons. Stability is the goal. The root cellar principle is consistent temperature, not just cold temperature. Step 6. Annual viability testing. Roof does this every year without exception, and I've adopted the same practice. It takes 15 minutes and it tells you everything you need to know about the health of your seed collection. In late winter, roughly 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date, pull each variety from storage and do a germination test. Take 10 seeds from the jar. Dampen a paper towel until it's moist but not dripping. Lay the 10 seeds on one half of the towel, fold the other half over them, and place the folded towel inside a loosely sealed plastic bag. Write the variety and date on the bag with a marker. Put it somewhere warm, the top of a refrigerator, a high shelf near a heat source, or anywhere that stays between 65 and 75 degrees. Check daily starting on day 3. Count how many germinate by day 10. That number out of 10 is your germination rate as a percentage. 8 out of 10 means 80%. Excellent. 6 out of 10 means 60%. Acceptable. Plant more densely. 4 out of 10 means 40%. Borderline. Consider refreshing this variety from a new source. Fewer than 4 means the seeds have degraded beyond reliable planting use. Testing practice also tells you something important. If germination rates are declining faster than you'd expect, given your storage conditions, it signals that either the initial drying wasn't thorough enough, the storage location has a temperature or humidity problem, or the jar seal has compromised. It gives you the information to correct course before you lose the variety entirely. Seeds that germinate in the test can be planted. Don't waste them. Germination tests are free replanting opportunities. Step 7. Building a generational seed collection. The Amish approach to seed saving isn't just about preserving seeds year to year. It's about building a collection that grows and improves over time. That's the real ambition behind the method, and it's what transforms seed saving from a frugal habit into something genuinely meaningful. Start with 5 varieties. That's the number Ruth recommends for a beginner. Small enough to manage well, large enough to begin learning the differences between crops. Pick varieties that are central to your cooking and your climate. Tomatoes if you grow them well, beans or squash if those do better in your region. The right 5 varieties for someone in Georgia are different from the right 5 varieties for someone in Vermont. Every year, save seeds from your best performers and add 1 or 2 new open-pollinated varieties to the collection. Within 5 years, you'll have a seed bank of 15 to 20 varieties that are specifically adapted to your soil and your microclimate, something you couldn't buy from any seed company at any price. The Amish also trade seeds within their communities, and that practice is worth emulating. Connecting with other seed savers in your region through local gardening clubs, seed libraries, or online communities gives you access to locally adapted varieties and provides backup for your collection. If something happens to your storage, someone in your network likely has what you need. The long view matters here. Ruth didn't think about seeds in terms of this season. She thought about seeds in terms of what her grandchildren would be planting. That perspective changes how carefully you take every step of this process. All right, I promised you a stripped-down version, and here it is. This is the 10-minute beginner method using only 2 ingredients. If you've never saved the seed in your life and you want to start tonight, this is where you start. What you need: 1 clean glass jar with a lid, a mason jar, a pasta sauce jar, anything glass with a decent seal, and white rice. That's it. No special equipment, no online orders required. Here's what you do. Take whatever seeds you have. If it's late summer or fall, you can pull seeds from vegetables you've grown. If you don't have fresh seeds, even seeds from an open pollinated packet that you bought this year will work. Spread them on a ceramic plate and let them sit at room temperature for a full week, just air drying, nothing else. The only rule is no paper towels and no direct sunlight. While the seeds are drying, prepare your rice desiccant. Put about a quarter cup of white rice on a baking sheet, bake it at 250 degrees for 30 minutes, let it cool completely, tie it into a small cloth square, any old cotton fabric you can sacrifice, tied with a rubber band. This is your moisture absorber. After the week of air drying, put your seeds into the glass jar. Drop the rice sachet on top. Seal the jar. Write the variety and year on a piece of masking tape on the jar lid. Put the jar in the back of your refrigerator. That's the strip-down method. Will it get you to 50 years? Probably not. You're skipping stage 2 of the full drying process, and you may not have achieved the ideal internal moisture content. But will it dramatically outperform paper envelopes in a drawer? Absolutely. Will those seeds still be viable in 5 years? Very likely. Will they be viable in 10? There's a reasonable chance. The strip-down method is not the Amish method. It's a gateway into the practice using the same core principles. Once you've done it once and you see the results, once you pull seeds out 2 years later and watch them germinate on day 4, you'll understand why this matters and you'll want to go deeper. That's when you come back to the full method and do it properly. Start simple. Get your hands on some seeds. Put them in a glass jar with some baked rice. Put the jar in your fridge. You're now a seed saver. Everything else builds from there. I want to bring this back to where it started because the numbers matter and I want to give them to you straight. 3 years ago, I stored my first batch of seeds using Roof's full method. 12 varieties, 4 tomatoes, 2 peppers, 2 squash, 2 beans, 1 lettuce, and 1 basil. All stored in glass jars with baked rice desiccants, all dried in 2 stages, all kept in my refrigerator at 38 degrees. At the 1-year mark, I tested germination on all 12. Average germination, 91%. For context, industry-standard fresh commercial seeds typically test at 85 to 90%. My 1-year-old seeds were outperforming fresh seeds. At the 2-year mark, I tested again. Average germination, 87%. Still excellent by any commercial standard. The varieties that have been most precisely dried held highest. One variety of lettuce that I had rushed through the drying process came in at 70%. Still plantable, but it showed me exactly where that step matters. I've also heard from viewers who started this method after watching an earlier video I posted on seed storage, some of whom have been reporting back consistently. A viewer in Tennessee sent me a message last month with photos of tomato seedlings she grew from seeds she had saved and stored this way for 3 years. Healthy, vigorous plants, identical in character to the original variety. Another viewer in the Pacific Northwest told me he tested 15-year-old seeds from his grandmother's collection, seeds she had stored in glass jars in a root cellar, and got 60% germination. 60% from 15-year-old seeds stored without any of the precision of modern techniques, just glass, cool temperature, and care. The method works. The science behind it is solid, and it is genuinely available to anyone willing to spend an afternoon getting it set up properly. If you've made it this far, you now have everything you need to start building a seed collection that could last the rest of your life. The free reference guide I mentioned mid-video covers all of this in a single printable page. The full drying process, the storage ratios, the container prep checklist, and the annual germination testing protocol. You can get it through the link in the description below, or if you're watching on a phone or tablet, scan the QR code on your screen right now, and it takes you directly to the download. No email required, just a practical resource to keep on hand. If this video gave you something useful, the single best thing you can do is share it with one person you know who gardens. That's honestly what keeps this channel going. Not algorithms, just people sharing things that actually work. And I want to hear from you. What's the first variety you're going to save? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'm genuinely curious which seeds matter most to the people watching this. Subscribe if you haven't already. I post practical, method-focused gardening content every week, all built around the same philosophy. Old knowledge, proven by time, explained by science. I'll see you in the next one.